it really does become such a tricky thing to get out of. Like, this is another reason that I'm pivoting into it more, because this is what keeps people stuck in porn, because they want to go be with their partner and they can't. And then it's so feels so messed up to them that inherently drives them back into the screen. So again, we know from science that more young people are preferring pornography, quote unquote preferring pornography over to relationships. But again, they're not talking about the fact that they cannot become aroused with another human being. So when I talk to people, they tell me this is the first time I've ever talked about this with anybody.
Yeah. How much of that is because it's so accessible? Like, I tell people all the time, like, I am grateful I was born in the 80s, and my introduction to pornography for the first 15 years was through paper, right? Magazines. I was lucky if I caught a glimpse of Skinamax, which is on the fuzzy TV, right? You maybe see something a little slipping up in there. But it wasn't really until I was in my mid 20s like that we had internet streaming technology. So at that point, I'm older on in life, but the young men today, the guys that you and I are working with, is like 10 years old. They're seeing the most hardcore stuff. So they're developing these patterns. By the time maybe they even have an opportunity to be intimate with a woman, they've had hundreds, if not thousands of quote unquote sexual experiences with a screen. How much of that is leading into their preferring it, once again, air quotes here, preferring it over sex, right?
Massive amounts. Yeah. That is the problem right there. Porn in your pocket, and early exposure. Basically, like I always say, porn has you by the brain. You don't know it. Like, you think it has you by the brain. Like, it immediately, even if you don't want to, it's highly addictive. It's a dopamine dependency. So like, it yanks you by the brain, and then it becomes the thing you go back to for mood regulation. But then it informs your sexuality. And we know this. I just made a video on how they call it your sex map. And, again, when I read the research, it like breaks my heart, and it makes me want to make 1,000 videos, because I want people to either pivot out of porn fast or just avoid it. Because what this study shows is, once you've done that, your sex map has changed forever. Like, they forever in quotes is what they say. It's very difficult to change your sex map back after you keep reinforcing it over and over and over. And that's what I find. I call it an arousal template, and some people call it fetishes. But, typically what happens is, the thing that you found when you found porn, whether it be whatever, doesn't matter what the act is, what the genre, the thing that gave you the most dopamine becomes the thing that then you want to continue to consume in porn, or to attempt to experience in your life. So, and just one other thing too, is that, all the developers of porn sites and of social media, they're not dumb. They know exactly what they're doing. The seeking and searching behavior is part of dopamine dependency. So they call dopamine the molecule of more motivation and pleasure. So basically, it motivates you back for more of what gave you the highest amount of pleasure. But the seeking and searching actually gives people a lot of dopamine. Like, even on Netflix or streaming services, it's set up for you to troll for like 20 minutes. Like, they're not dumb. And even just, scrolling's the new smoking. If you look that up, a lot of people, I've made some videos on that, but a lot of people will say scrolling's the new smoking. And just like smoking, it took about 50 years for people to believe that smoking was bad for them, even though inherently it's obvious that smoking's not good for you. But it's so addictive, it was difficult for people to stop.
Yeah, I have a talk I give to parents regularly. It's kind of social media danger and how to kind of regulate it with your teens. And two advertisements I will always pull up in that, I'll use them through the presentation, is smoking from the 50s, the doctor prescribed cigarette for pregnant women, and then cocaine, cough drops from like the late 1800s, where cough drops were literally laced with cocaine. It's like, here we thought back then that these were good things. The science catches up to it, but oftentimes it takes pioneers like you and I, and people that are, educating outside of, the institutions, and then eventually we'll catch up. And I think that's where the optimist in me like believes that and I've seen it, right, in 5 years. I'm sure you have, since you've really become vocal with this, like the change in people understanding, the change in awareness with all these things, but we still got to continue to drive, right?
Yeah, it's beautiful, because people are like, why don't you take down the institution? I'm like, I'm not even inspired to go towards taking down any institution, because the way, and actually I looked up all the research on smoking because I found it fascinating, the parallel, because I know they're already saying, like, scientists are already saying this is going to develop just like smoking did. And I looked up what made people stop smoking. I looked up scientific studies, not, blog posts or anything. And there were basically, a handful of factors that, first of all, they became aware of the dangers and that it could cause cancer. So I made a video on this about porn, is that when people know that porn causes ED, that's like equating, the fact that cigarettes cause cancer. Like cancer was a thing that made people stop smoking. ED is going to be a thing that makes people stop watching porn. It is a driving force. Another factor was the level of how addictive smoking was. So once studies came out and once people actually bought into the idea smoking's addictive, then they're like, I don't want an addiction. And then they try and it's difficult to quit. So they know they're addicted. So addiction was another marker. And the third one was secondhand smoke. So, which I think is such a cool parallel to porn, because people also don't realize how much it's impacting their relationships, especially like when it gets to a certain point, that tipping point, that straw that broke the camel's back. What happens is then, they'll have difficulty in their primary relationship with their partner. We know there's more than a 50% divorce and breakup rate when porn's in the mix, opposed to relationships that don't have porn. We know that it impacts children. And a lot of the people I work with are estranged from their children because their children found out about their porn habit and the kids don't want anything to do with them. Or it's changed the person who's addicted to porn because they interact in a hypersexual way, which makes them, like my friends will joke that they have porn dar or porn radar, because now, like if we're talking with someone and they're just so overly sexual, they can't stop talking about the things that they're thinking about. So that really impacts. So I thought that was really interesting. Cancer, addiction, and secondhand smoke, which is likened to ED, porn super addictive, and it's impacting and ruining your relationships
And your families. Yeah. This sexual mapping conversation is fascinating to me. And I think it solidifies some somewhat controversial statements that I've made. We use social media, understanding polarizing, quotes every once in a while will help you gain some traction. I made a bold statement. I've done it a couple times now, and I got some pushback. I get a lot of support, some pushback, that pornography is fueling the rise in both pedophilia and transgenderism, right? And when you look at kind of the data in the search studies out there, teen for decades or for years has been at the top of the charts. And last year, Pornhub came out and said that they had an initiative to push transgender pornography to change the sexual orientation of men. And I think what you're proving through science is when you begin to consume these things, this becomes your regular default desires or what you want to seek after.
Yes. And in sexual violence too, like we can't forget that. So like I've made bold statements like that too. And actually I put a couple new ones out, which I can share with you in a minute, that I'm like, this is going to get a ton of hate, but it's based on science. So don't shoot the messenger. That's what I tell people. Like, you and I are here having the courage to tell people the things they don't want to hear. It takes courage to do that. And, every once in a while I have to get back in my blue chair and go, are you still doing this, sister? Yeah. Get out there and tell people what they need to hear. So like the idea is that, and the reason I made like the face while you were talking is because I talk to people about this stuff all the time. So we know the science, but anecdotally, my heart breaks for people who are so confused about their sexual orientation and what they like because they've consumed this, that, and the other thing for so long. It is creating so much heartache for people. And there's one thing about transgender people who have known that and they want that. But then especially, like there's people who are like, I have no idea what I want. And all I know is I know that impacted me. And, they're like, and actually some of the people I work with, they try to be with the same sex partner and they're like, no, but they think they want to because of the high levels of dopamine. So like for men who are watching porn and you're watching men, you're getting a high level of dopamine from watching the males, not only the females, but the males. So it is creating a lot of same-sex attraction. We know that for sure. And, there's a type of OCD, which, this stuff, there's only a couple things that chap my arse, and these are a few of them, is that like, talking about homosexual OCD being obsessive compulsive disorder. So there's a classification now with no talk of porn's influence in that. So like now they're just saying randomly for no reason, a whole lot of people are having OCD about being with the same sex. like that is coming from somewhere. Again, just think about this stuff logically. Once you know some of this information, like high dopamine levels from watching the same sex in highly stimulating sexual experiences, it's about the brain, it's about dopamine. It's not even about the same sex. It's a dopamine dependency linked to whatever thing you are watching, whether that be children, whether that be violence, whether that be same sex. Again, I work with people who are physically ill because they can't stop watching too young of images. They are sick with themselves, but they can't stop.